So what I want to do is, before I unpack everything from here, I want to give a quick listen to the song. Everything is packed inside the folder, and I just want to, make some notes here for myself as far as things that I want to adjust here today. So we're going to be looking at a variety of different things. I'm going to be adding one final section to the entire thing, which is just going to kind of be an outro with all of this, and we'll do that very quickly after we listen to this once through, just to get an idea. So let's take a quick listen. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this last section here and I just highlighted all of it and I'm simply going to duplicate it out. I did that for the top portion and I'm going to do this let me unselect those and let's deselect that as well. And then let's just go here and take this entire section here. And what I'm going to do is deselect these guys and I'm going to color code this one to be, I think we'll do it as a, okay. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to call this outro. And the idea here with this is that what I think I want it to do is I want it to do a fade out over time. And this is going to be a master track thing. So in order to do that, what I'm going to need to do is I'm going to display my master track in the arranger view. let me go ahead and hide the mixer. And I'm going to bring up the inspector here, and over on the visibility agent on the right-hand side, I have output channels and input and output, and I can choose a stereo out, so I can see the stereo out go here, and what I'm going to do is I'm simply going to put a breakpoint here, and I'm going to put a breakpoint here, and then basically have the entire thing fade out over those last 16 bars. So let's just give a quick listen. Let's cue it up to exactly that moment in time. Okay, so that's the general idea so far of the tune. So there's some different things that I want to do as far as massaging here, and this was a very much like a blocky kind of arrangement here. There's definitely, we definitely don't want things going all the time through the entire mix, and this is where we're going to start doing some edits to make the changes and turnarounds. But there are some other things that we want to deal with first before all of this. Typically, when we're using drums, we definitely want to have the ability to have parts separated, and we want to basically be able to have our kick independent from our snare and our hat independent from our kick and our snare as well. And separation is really key. Danny will tell you with mixing, if you don't have access to these individual pieces and parts, it makes it kind of hard to deal with it, because you're kind of like, trying to adjust, make adjustments that are going to affect all the parts at the same time. You really want to have individual control out of all of this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to highlight my entire kick and snare and hat tracks here. And I'm going to go to the MIDI commands. Actually, I'm going to go to the edit. And what I want to do is, let's see, I have it as a key command that I set here. And this is one of these things that I have memorized as a key command. And let's see, is there a logical presets? No. Dissolve part is what we want to do. That's what it's called. So dissolve part is basically going to create three separate. Remember, there are three parts inside this MIDI region and section that I have here. There's a kick, there's a snare, and there's a hi-hat. So what it's going to do is it's going to create three separate battery tracks, one for the kick, one for the snare, and one for the hat. So I have three independent parts. So I'm going to hit dissolve part here, and I'm going to separate it by pitches and optimize the display and say, okay, and voila. There are the parts right there. So if we solo this out, just to give a quick listen to what's going on here. And what is going on here? Let me see. So my mistake, there were actually more parts inside here than I had thought. So there was actually a crash, there was a hi-hat, there was two snares that were layered, and there was a kick. So what it did is it created multiple parts for each one here. So what I didn't, the hi-hat was left alone here on this track. So basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the hi-hat part and I'm going to put it onto the other hi-hat part. It didn't separate anything because there wasn't multiple things going on here, so it left that one completely undisturbed. So I think the hi-hat piece is right here. Let me just make sure before. Yep. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to option click and drag this down here to the hi-hat track. And, for the sake of organization here, I'm going to quickly rename things. So I'm going to call this crash, and I'm going to call this hat, and I'm going to call this, actually, I think I misname them. This was kick. That was hat. This is crash. This one is snare 1. And this one is snare 2. Let me just solo them out just to make sure. Okay, so now that I've got those parts, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this main beat part here, and I'm also going to go and take the hi-hat regions that were here, and I'm going to go ahead and mute them with the Shift-M key. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take these separated drums, and I'm going to pack them inside their own folder inside here. So we're going to call this separated drums. And I don't need this in here anymore, this main beat track. So what I'm going to do is the first thing what I want to do is I want to hit the D key. And what that's going to do is that's going to deactivate the entire track. This is a way to save resources and processor usage. So when we're using virtual instruments and we've done a bounce and we've taken the parts and everything, there's absolutely no reason to keep using the CPU inside the computer. So as a way to save the CPU, I hit the D key and that deactivates the track. And I don't remember where it is, but if we go here to the key commands, deactivate, and then go here. Well, this is again one of these things that I'm going to have to get back to you exactly what the command is with this as far as the deactivate it, but I will. But that's not the important thing here with all of this at this moment in time. So what I'm going to do with this now is that I'm going to go to my visibility agent and I'm going to go here and change this out so that I don't have to look at that particular aspect of things anymore. I'm also going to take this and I'm going to color code it to a new color so that we have the entire drums here, so this is separated drums. Now I have the supplemental kick and snare track also, and this was basically this was basically layering the whole thing so that I was getting a beefier sound with all of it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to highlight this part as well, and we already know where it is in the key in the drop down menu here. So I'm going to hit my Option Command Shift D key. Again, this is one of these things that I like to use as a key command. I think it's very, very handy. And yes, I think it is called disable. So I'm just going to take a quick look after I do this. So if I hit OK, what it's going to do is it's going to separate those guys into their own separate tracks. So again, there were 2 layers of kick and snare there, and there are 2 layers of snare and 1 layer of kick. And let's give a quick listen to this to hear. So let's just quickly rename this. So this is going to be kick 2, and this is going to be snare 3, and this is going to be snare 4. And what I'm going to do with these guys is I'm going to go ahead and mute out where they don't need to play at the beginning here. They come in at 25 like the rest of the parts. And I'm going to go here and take all of these and I'm going to, well, let's actually drop them in one at a time. So I'm going to take the kick there and I'm going to take the snare here and move it up and then take snare 4 and switch it out like that. So now my drums are all packed nicely inside. Let's go to this and unsolo. In case something is soloed that's packed inside a folder, we can always go up to the top part here and deactivate all the solo states or all the mute states because things sometimes can get a little bit confusing. So I'm going to take my supplemental kick and snare track and I'm going to hit the D key. And let's just check this out to see if disable is the correct command here with this. And let's say search. Yes, disable enable track. Okay, so that was the correct command. Great. Okay, so let's get out of there. Now let's take the separated drums. Let's take the supplemental kick and snare, and let's go ahead to the visibility. And let's hide that so that everything is cleaner looking. And now, if we take a look at the mixer, we can see that we have complete separation for all the kicks and the snares and all of the drums in general and everything. So this is going to allow us to do different things like utilize compression for the kicks and utilize, compressors for the snares and have everything in a completely separated kind of state and everything. We're not going to get too much into the mixing and everything here with all of this, but just basically be aware that this is basically the procedure that we would want to do and how we would get to that point. I'm also going to go ahead and highlight all of these tracks as well and color code them so that they look different inside the mixer. And let's go ahead here and set this to a green. And wonderful. Okay, so now take a quick look. Okay, yes, everything is completely clear and sensible as far as what it is. And now what we want to do is we want to go ahead and we want to first, let's resize everything. We want to give a quick listen to for where the drums come in. We want to start thinking about dropping some parts in and dropping some parts out and creating some interesting pickups and transitions into different things. So I'm just going to, the drums come in at measure 25. So I'm going to back up to measure 25 here. Okay, so the drums come in very abruptly here, and what I want to do is, I want to create a filter change on this so that it basically comes in through maybe a high-pass filter with all of this, or a bandpass filter. So the parts that are going to be affected by all of this are going to be all of these separated parts that I had just created. The shaker comes in at measure, let's see, the shaker is going to come in at measure 49 here. So let's go ahead and let's take these parts out. And let's do Command M. Okay, so there's a couple of different ways that I can go about this. Remember I said that there's more than one way to skin the cat here with this with Cubase. So there's two ways that I could do this. We'll call it the old school way, the first one, and we'll call the other one the more fancier modern way. And I kind of lean towards the fancier kind of modern way to do this simply because it does tend to be faster to do this type of editing and stuff like this. And I'm also going to, as we go along, I'm going to go ahead here and delete muted parts because I think it'll just eliminate some of the clutter going on and make things a little bit more clear for us to see exactly what, we're dealing with here. So what I'm going to do is it's this region here from measure 25 through 33 where I want to have the filter change going on. So what I'm going to do is the first way, the old school way of doing this is that what I would do is I would simply take all of the parts here and I would select them all and then right click and send them all to their own group channel. And that would be one way to accomplish this whole thing. The other way is to simply create another audio track out of this whole thing by taking all of these parts. And this is a command that we had looked at before, but we're going to look at it again here. And I'm also going to take the crash here and get rid of it at this point in time because I don't want it happening. In fact, I'm going to go here and I'm going to delete it so that it doesn't happen every other one, because the way that I programmed the beat was that it was happening more frequently because the beat was smaller. And I'm going to go ahead here and get rid of it now for every other one here. Actually, we'll keep it every 4 measures. And let me just go here and get rid of it for here, and here, and here, and here. Okay. So we had looked at this before, and this is actually one of my favorite tricks in the book here inside Cubase. And this is called render in place, what we're going to be looking at. We'd used this before, and basically what this is going to do is this is going to allow us to make a brand new audio track out of either independent regions or, the sum of parts. So basically the way that this works is that I can go here to the edit, I believe is where it is, and render in place is what the command is. So I go to render settings because I don't want to use the current settings that I have. So what I can do is I can say to render them as separate events, as block events, or as one event. I'm going to render them as one event. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, let's see, mix down to one audio file. Why are we not getting that? Let's see. Okay, so we have to do channel settings, and that will have the EQs and everything else in there. Let's say channel settings is what we're going to do here with this. And what we're going to do is say mix down to one audio file. And what this is going to do is it's going to make one stereo audio file out of all of those parts onto a new audio track inside the mix here. And the idea with this is that I can then go ahead and use that particular audio file to apply the filtering on and then mute out the other parts if I want. So here we go. So let's hit the render button. And voila, there's our new audio track, and it muted out the additional parts that were there. So this is kind of the, I oftentimes prefer working this way simply because I can get things into audio, and it ends up being cleaner that I only have to deal with things on one track. So let's give a quick listen. Okay, so let's go ahead and rename this drum bounce. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and bring up the console, and I'm going to choose the morph filter. And with the morph filter, what I want to do is I want to utilize the high pass 12 functionality, and we're going to use it like this. So it's basically going to creep down so that when it gets to the end of that measure, it's all the way down. So let's go ahead and turn on the automation record, the right function, and let's go ahead and play this back. Okay, so I think what I want to do is kill some of the resonance here on this, and also I may need to lower the volume of that clip, and I can do it just from here. I don't even need to go into the mixer to do it. And if we take a look at the automation that was recorded, there it is, it's in there. Let's go ahead and turn the right function off. Okay, so I just want to go ahead and clean the automation up a little bit here. So I'm going to go ahead and highlight these different parts and hit delete and just simply get rid of everything except for probably the first breakpoint and not even the end of it. So let's go ahead there and get rid of that, and let's get rid of that. And now let's just go ahead and create another breakpoint here and drop it in like that. Ah, that was actually the frequency one. So let's go ahead here. It was actually recording while I was changing the. So I have two of them here. I have the resonance, and I have the. Actually, no, the morph. No, I was right with this. Sorry. Okay, so I want to make it so that the drums don't run completely through all the way to the end, so I'm going to cut them off for a bar here, and I'm also going to go ahead and probably repeat this over different sections here as we play through. So I'm just going to go ahead and do this to the MIDI parts, and I can do this. I don't need to be exposed to the entire view here. I can do this from the actual folder itself, so it's going to make it easier, so I don't need to edit, directly in the individual parts here with this. So let's go ahead and play this back. Okay, so for anybody interested, the technical term for that type of editing is called group editing, and it's very, very handy when we're working on multiple audio tracks at the same time. If we did a bunch of vocal takes, had a bunch of different live recorded instrument tracks and everything that we were using, we want to do an edit like that. It's very, very handy. So we can do that to the entire song here as well. And this was part of the thought process and part of the reasoning here with as far as why I packed things into the folders like I did. So another change that I might want to do here is I might want to create this sidechain type of pulsation effect with the pulse that's going on. And the idea with it is that what I want to do is I want to put in a steady, quarter note type of element for it to sidechain against. So I'm going to go to my media bay, and I'm going to find a 909 kick in my collection. Doesn't need to be anything fancy, just something simple here. So let's go to, let's go back up to my sound library, and let's go to drum samples, and let's go to TR909, and let's go to Max V, and let's hear. And that should be fine. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to drop this in at the beginning here. Let's see, did it put it in? No. Okay. Okay. So there it is, and I think it's just very, very tiny at the very, very beginning of this. No, it put it in at the beginning of the loop. Okay, so let's go ahead and let's move it all the way back. Okay, so now let's go ahead and hide the view over here. And now let's go ahead and zoom in to the very, very beginning of this so that we can see this. So what I want to do is I simply want to create a 4 on the floor type thing with this to create, to use as a sidechain source for this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the audio and option click and option click and option click to create this one measure thing. Now, when we're dealing with these teeny tiny little pieces of audio, they can get very, very clumsy as far as moving them around and looking at these. So one of the very nifty things that we can do is we can actually pack these audio files into a new object that's a container. So what I'm going to do is go to audio here, and I'm going to say events to part. And I have this set to a key command because this is something that I use all the time. So what it did now was it just made a single movable object out of this entire thing so that I don't need to deal with teeny tiny little pieces of this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to duplicate this out. Let's take a listen to where the pulsations are coming in. I believe the pulsations are coming in at measure 9, right? Measure 17. So let's go ahead and hit the cycle for intro B, and let's actually take these guys here. Let's take one of these and put it over here. And then let's go here to the zoom for part B. And now we see the whole thing. So now you see how handy the marker tracks are as far as getting to the different sections. So I'm going to take this, and what I'm going to do is I'm simply going to repeat the region all the way across like that. So it created a nice copy of it. And what I'm going to do is go to my pulse track here, and I'm going to hit the E key to bring up the console, and I'm going to use the Steinberg compressor that's here. And with the Steinberg compressor, I'm going to bring up the edit command and bring this up. And then what I'm going to do is set up a sidechain input as the input into it. And where I go to sidechain input, add sidechain input, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to choose this Max V 909 kick, which is right here. And voila, now it's there. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to mute it out on the tracks so that we don't hear it. And if we play this back, I just want to hear these two parts going against each other. And I need to turn the sidechain input on, obviously. That's one of the things. Yes, enable sidechain. Okay, so I'm going to unsolo this right now and unsolo that, and I'm just going to leave it muted, and I believe that it should be doing it now. Let's pull the gain down on this. And what I want to do here is I want to go ahead and make it so that the kick drum is not going to the stereo out. So I'm going to say no bus with this. And that way it's still pointed to the sidechain, but we're not going to hear it in the entire mix. And one of the things that I want to do with this also is I want to utilize the low cut and basically bring up some of the low cut on this to get just the top frequencies of the kick drum or higher frequencies. Okay, so let's go ahead now and let's take that event to part and let's just region copy it out all the way to the end of the song. And this creates a nice effect with the pulse track. With the continuing point here for continuity, I'm going to go ahead and take the kick source track and I'm going to put it up here below the pulse, and I'm going to go ahead and take the pulse, and everything is actually packed inside the entire song here. So let's go ahead and take the pulse and the kick drum source for the sidechain, and let's go ahead and folder track these two together and call the whole thing sidechain pulse. And now it's all super organized. And we can color code the whole thing, and now it's all one single piece. And since I'm not using the sound of the 909 to create the sidechain, what criteria did you use in selecting it? Just the wave shape, decay time. It's very predictable and it's handy, and it's typically the kick is typically the element that's used as a sidechain source with all of this. And I wanted to have something that was going to basically be able to allow me to, have the low frequency range and utilize an EQ to cut some of the bottom end off of it. But typically when we're doing this type of sidechain scenario, it's a kick drum that we're using as the source. Yeah, and the 909, as far as that goes, it's just a very, very predictable and very commonly used thing with all of this. So one of the elements here that we have kind of drowned out in the entire mix has been the silent ARP thing. And what I'm going to do is, I'm going to actually bring it outside of the chord part just for a second so that we can take a look at it, you know, aside from everything else without the clutter. And we kind of lost a lot of the sound here in the mix with all of this simply because there's other things going on. Let me go ahead and loop the range here where it would be coming in at measure 17. Okay, so now it's back in the mix. And remember I had these two silent tracks here, and I had them both summed to each other, summed into this group track. So what I want to do is I want to also play with the sidechain trick here with the sum of the silent track as well. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to put a compressor onto this track as well. And I'm going to go ahead now and I'm going to take inside here, and I'm going to go to my sidechain pulse, and I'm going to take the sidechain kick source track, and I'm going to option click and copy it up above here so that there's a second one of these. Actually, no, it didn't do that. I need to go ahead and let's actually just move it back in here. And what I'm going to do with it is I'm going to duplicate it using the Command Escape key that I have quickly set, and I'm going to go ahead and take it and I'm going to drop it up here to be in the silent track. And what I want to do with it is I want to go ahead and I want to change what the actual pattern is here with this. So I'm going to go ahead and this is one of these situations where doing the repeat aliases would have been very handy, but you know, hindsight is always 20/20, but it's not that big of a deal when I do it now. I will go ahead and do it that way. But basically what I want to do with this is, let's go here to that particular area. So what I want to do with this is I want to make it so that it's not happening every single quarter note. I want to have it happen on the first one and the third one of each measure. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to hit the Enter key to go in here. I'm going to take the second and the fourth one and I'm simply going to delete them and get back out. And now what I'm going to do is take this entire thing and I'm going to do the repeat region here, but I'm going to hold down the option, the command and the shift keys, and this is going to do a shared copy with all of it. So that if I go ahead and decide, oh no, I want it to happen faster, I can, but it's going to just basically be shared copies for all of this. And I also can get rid of everything back here, don't need it. And now, if we take a listen to that section, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go here and we're going to call this 909 kick source for SYG silent group. And let's go ahead and just resize the tracks. And let's solo this part out here as well. So let's just make sure that for this we have no bus going, and for the silent sum, which is right here, we have the compressor on it. We need to go ahead and choose a sidechain source for this. So the sidechain source for this one is going to be the Kick 909 sidechain source for that. And we're going to go ahead and turn the makeup gain off, and we're going to pull our threshold down, and we're also going to turn our ratio up all the way. And let's give a quick listen to this. So the idea with this type of effect is that it's going to bounce off of the beat and it's going to create some space so that everything doesn't sound so, so quantized and so, on the grid. So if we play this back, listen to the section here with everything unsoloed, unmuted. Now, the sidechain compression we used here in kind of an unorthodox, musical kind of way to create, create pulsations and create rhythms out of parts that are, very, very straight and hitting on the beat and everything. The more common usage for this is to use this on the bass. And, it's typically sidechained to the kick. And what I want to do here is very quickly, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to take my kick track. I'm also going to go ahead and take these pieces here that were, part of the bounce and everything, and looking at them, I don't like seeing the gray muted stuff there, so I'm simply just going to erase that from the mixture here so that everything is completely clear. But basically what I want to do is I want to go ahead and I want to make it so that my kick drum and my bass is sidechained to my kick drum so that it's getting out of the way slightly when the kick drum hits and everything. So what I'm going to do is there's a couple different ways that I could do this. I could sidechain the bass to the kick drum live inside the whole thing, or I could take the kick drum and simply go ahead and do a bounce in place to this entire thing and make a new audio track out of it and then have a dummy track to use for the sidechain and everything, which is typically what I prefer to do because that gives me more control over the track then. And let's just figure out which kick drum is the one to take, or maybe it's the sum of all of them. Okay, so I think it's the sum of those guys. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take all of these parts here, and I have this set to a key command of Control B. And what I do is I hit Control B, and it brings up my render in place function. And what I'm going to do is mix it down to one file. I'm going to call this kick bounce. And I'm going to take the channel settings, all of it, and it's going to print it as one single event. And I'm going to say render, and voila, just like that, I've gone ahead and created a brand new kick drum track to use as my sidechain source for the bass. And as you see, there's a couple of key commands that, there's a number of key commands that I'm using, for functions on a regular basis. The render in place is one of these things that I use like crazy when I'm working on a track. And it's one of these things that I simply just don't want to go to, menus to go and pick out. So I'm going to go to this kick bounce. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and set it to no bus so that we don't hear it in the mix. And I'm going to go ahead and drag it down to the bass track here. put it right below. And what I'm going to do is on the bass track, what I'm going to do is hit the enter key, the E key, and I'm going to go ahead and bring up compressor. And I'm going to pull up the interface for the compressor, and I'm going to create a new sidechain input, and the new sidechain input is going to be kick bounce. And I'm going to go ahead and say that's okay, then turn that on. Then I'm going to pull my makeup gain, turn my automatic makeup gain off. I'm going to pull my threshold down. And I'm not going to necessarily use severe high ratios with this. I want it to be more subtle. I don't want it to be something that's going to be like this pumping type of effect. I just want it to slightly get out of the way from when the bass and the kick hit. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to solo this out for a second so we can hear it. And as you hear, it's just subtle here. It's just going to slightly get the bass out of the way of the kick drum. So let's just give a quick listen back to this with something going on full in the section. So let's go to drums and melody. Okay, so that makes sense. So any questions about any of this so far?
It's kind of a random question. I know you said you made custom colors, but when you open up your color palette, you have a ton more colors. You just have more than I have. Is that because you added that manually, or how do you have so many colors?
Yes, of course I edit it manually. There's a couple of custom color templates that I downloaded from the internet. I think I can find them for next class to share them. But basically, there's one that does 128 colors. There's one that does 256. I think this one is 64 is what this ultimately is. Let's see what this is. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. There's 80 here. I'm sorry, less than 80. There's 76. So basically, yeah, I can share that. This is what these are. These are the machine colors for the Native Instruments machine interface. And again, Cubase is completely customizable. I forget what the default one is because I haven't had it for so long. And the idea with it is that once you get the colors into the whole thing, you can save the set the set the whole thing up. I can show how to do this in the next class as far as how to do it. I haven't done it in a while because I changed it, and it was basically one of these things where it was like, okay, I don't want to alter this. I'm just going to leave it the way that it is. But basically the idea here with today was is that we were massaging what we had already put together, and just using the effects to kind of animate and change things around a little bit. And we saw the bounce in place, and we also saw how to use the sidechain functionality to create these pulsations and everything. Any questions? No.
No, very, very clear. And the folder arranging, sometimes I think people think folders are just for organization and getting things out of the way and cleaning up, what you're looking at, but using it for editing is quick.
Oh no, it's very, very fast for doing editing. I mean, like I said, the arranging is really where Cubase shines with all of this, and it's very, very. Once you get the moves down and you get the hang of it, as far as how everything, how you're going to run around it, it's very, very fast to do stuff, and it's pretty straightforward too. I mean, as far as you see me fumble sometimes, and that's because the commands change from program to program as far as what these things are. So render in place inside Cubase is called bounce in place inside Logic, and it's called bounce in place inside Bitwig, but they call it render in place inside Cubase. And some of these things just kind of trip me up. The dissolve MIDI parts is a very, very handy thing for all of
Very
this. And this is one of these things that we can, we'll be looking at in the next level as far as using with multi-output drums and different things like this. And it's very, very handy to, separate and split everything up across different tracks that we really are able to get into that separation. If we wanted to EQ and we wanted to use compressors and do different effects on different drum parts and everything like that.
Yeah, I
I
mean,
think
Wednesday is the last class of production in Cubase 1. I know I'm going to say what's on the menu.
Yeah, no, we're going to be looking at a couple more things here with this, and kind of looking at some new places to go. We'll do a review of most of the stuff that we've gone through here already, just because we covered a ton of material here, and I've tried to present it in a way that's going to be, methodical as far as the way that you would want to put things together, and some, in sort of a successive order here that kind of makes sense, instead of like, well, why are we going from this place to that place and that place to that place? So, this was as sensible as I could put it together, for the most part. And I think that, it's definitely worthy of some review here, to look at the stuff again, because there's just a ton of stuff. And this isn't even, this is like, they talk about, the iceberg and everything, and how, we only see like a fraction of the actual big chunk of the whole thing, because that's all we see coming out of the water. And I guess I can equate what we're seeing here to that, because this is really only the very, very tip of the iceberg as far as what Cubase allows us to do, and some of the potential as far as the functionality. It really does do everything under the sun as far as any program, and there isn't anything that I'm not able to do inside Cubase that I'm able to do inside some of these other programs. There's other ways to achieve it, but all of these things are really are all really there. So any final questions? No?
No, I think that's good.
All right. Well, I hope you all have a wonderful weekend, and yeah, I'll see you on Sunday.
Sunday sound design.
Let's go ahead and save this.
Awesome. Thank you, Chris. Good to see you,
Thank
Kev.
you.